Well, hello there, my friends. We meet again. I thought this video would start out with removing the grid cap from the tube. Let's just get right into this grid cap business. What I'm going to do, as I told you before, is a big old blob of solder on the top of that grid cap. I'm going to take this iron and I'm going to melt the solder. And once I get it melted, normally I melt with the soldering iron and then take a pair of needle nose and lift it off after it gets melted. But since I'm only working with one hand, we'll go ahead and melt it. And then here's the big plan. Are you ready for this? The big plan. Once the solder gets melted, we're going to quickly reach down here and grab the needle nose, turn it around, and shake it like that. And the way I have it figured, the cap will fall right on the towel. Alright, let's see how that theory goes. Let's warm up the iron here. Now this is going to be fun because I have to heat this and melt that solder and then get this thing in the soldering holder and get my hand back on this pair of vice grips and shake it off before the solder completely hardens back up again. I wonder what the odds are that I can do that. Well, here goes. To help me, what I'm going to do is put a little bit of solder on the end of the iron, which transfers heat a lot faster. Okay, here we go. We're going to go ahead and start heating on that baby. Let's see what happens. She's beginning to melt. She's melting good. I want to get it nice and hot, nice and hot. It won't affect the glass too much. Nice and hot. Okay, here we go. Transfer. Well, I got the solder out of it. The solder came out. Let's try heating it a little bit more. It should work. Try it again. If that doesn't work, we'll just have to try. I'll have to come back after I removed it. Come on now, I know you'll work. I've done this before, but of course it was with two hands. Let her melt, let her melt, let her melt, let her melt. Okay, I'm about ready. Still didn't come off. Son of a gun. Well, I guess I'm just going to have to come back. Well, I found out why it wouldn't come right off. The reason being that the wire had come through the hole in the grid cap. It had come through the hole in the center. And there's the hole. You can see it down through there. And it had been bent over into a little hook. And it was hooked over on the outside here. So once I straightened it out, it just came right out. Now here you can see all the old glue. Let me get a light over here. Maybe it'll help a little bit. Here you can see all the old glue up in there that originally held it to the cap to the glass. Really ragged stuff. Old stuff, but they used what they had in those days. Now, here's something I want to show you. The wire comes through right here and it sticks up. There have been times when the cap twisted right off the top and broke that wire off flush with the top of that glass. Broke it right off flush. So, there's nothing to solder to. Well, what do? Well, believe it or not, there's even a fix for that. What we did was what I've done and other people have done, you take a pair of needle nose or a pair of small diagonal cutters and you kind of like chip away some of the glass all the way around the tube, just kind of gently. You have nothing to lose at that point. If the tube winds up not working, so what? It's not working anyway. So you go ahead and you chip away a little bit of the glass. Don't go down too far. You don't want to go down inside the envelope. You chip away a little bit, chip away a little bit, chip away a little bit. It takes a lot of patience. Go around and around and around until eventually, if you're lucky, you'll have a little bit of copper wire, maybe an 1/8 inch of it, exposed, sometimes a little bit less. Now, if you're smart and you're good and you're patient and you don't shake a lot, or if you shake and you coordinate those shakes, you can solder a new piece of wire onto that little tiny stub that sticks up out of the glass after you've chipped it away. It takes a lot of patience, okay? Just make sure you have eye protection when you do that, just in case a tiny little piece flies up. You don't want it to get in your eye. Probably won't, but you don't want to take any chances, Once you get it soldered, and you've got a secure wire, it may be, 1 inch long. Then you go ahead and put some epoxy glue around it or something of that nature and let it harden. Then you can go ahead and run your wire up through the cap and out the top and solder it on, or you put your glue on first. Put your glue on, your glass, and your glue on the bottom of the cap. Then you put it on, run your wire up through the hole in the cap, and then solder it on, okay? As usual, we're going to go ahead and give it a real good cleaning with alcohol and this brush all the way around. I'm going to clean off all that old crap. We want this thing to be nice and clean because we're going to be putting fresh cement on this thing. And we want it to stick real good, okay? The next thing you do is take your old pair of duckbill pliers. I keep telling you, you really do need a pair of these because there's no teeth in them. And you kind of gently straighten it because there's just going to be kinks in that wire. You want to just kind of gently squeeze it. There again, a little bit of squoze. Kind of get it to go as straight as you can, okay? And then you will take your pocket knife or something small with a point on it. And I've already done it here, but you just kind of ream out that hole a little bit. It gives you a little more room to work, okay? Gets that wire up through there. I've tried to do it without reaming the hole, and ultimately I wind up bending that wire and have to go back and straighten it out. And you can only do that so many times, it'll wind up snapping, and then you have to start glass chipping. Now we do a little trial fit and see if that thing's going to go on there. I don't expect that wire to be in the exact center of this thing right here. It just never seems to work out. The cap always seems to be a little bit. Oh, look at that. She fell right on there. Look at that. It's right on there. Can't beat that. Let's see if I can get a good focus in here. I think this lamp is keeping it from happening, but you can see the wire sticking out right there. So what I'm going to do now is prepare some glue. I've decided to use this 5-minute epoxy gel again. This stuff works really good, but I was concerned about temperature, I know if I don't say anything about temperature, somebody's going to jump in and say, oh, what about temperature, This stuff is supposedly good from minus 40 degrees up till 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't think that cap's going to get to be 200 degrees Fahrenheit, so it should work well. All right? Let me mix some up, and let's get this cap glued back down. That's our next step. Alright, the epoxy has been mixed. Now what we're going to do is just take a little dab of it here and kind of put it around the outside edge of this cap. It's going to take 2 hands for me to do that. And then I'll wait a few minutes for it to become a little bit tacky. If some of it squishes out around on the glass, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, okay? You don't want gobs running down, of course, but a little bit will come out from around the cap. It's best to put the glue on the cap only. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I now have the cap seated back on there, and we'll wait about an hour for the glue to dry. This little tiny bit squished out around the edge, but don't worry about that. Like I said, no big deal. Not an issue. Now, the grid cap wire itself, this is the control grid wire. You can see the wire in the glass right there. After this thing has dried for about an hour, I'll bend that wire back over, and maybe not so much as it was bent over last time, but I'll bend it over a little bit. And then flow some new solder in, and we will be done. One more thing before I actually solder this thing up. When you put the cap down over the wire down to the glass tube, sometimes the glue will get on this little wire. Just take a X-Acto knife or your knife blade or something after it's dried. Then just kind of scrape all the way around it just a little bit to see if there's any glue on there. There was a little bit of glue on this wire, so I scraped it off a little bit, and I am now back down to the wire itself. And you want to do that before you solder it, otherwise it won't solder very well if you don't. And there you have it, folks. It's all soldered up, good to go. Now you know how to repair a loose grid cap. Now remember, there's no such thing as a half loose grid cap. If it's loose, if it wiggles back and forth, if it rotates even the slightest bit, the glue has come loose from the glass and it needs to be repaired. Well, the power cord has arrived. I use this brown cloth covered stuff. I like it a lot. I've used it in every single radio. Maybe one of these days I'll change to a black cloth. I don't know. But I like the brown. It works real good. Now, I run it through the hole on the chassis right here. And by the way, that rubber grommet you see right there, that's a 5/8 inch outside diameter. And this is, of course, 1/16 thick metal. 5/8 inch outside diameter grommet is what that hole takes right there. Anyway, we ran it through and we have tied it into a knot right there. There's the knot. And that'll keep it from coming back through. And I have stripped off quite a bit of it, you know, because I'm going to be running it over here to the other side of that fuse holder, and then of course over here to this connector right here too. So I'm going to need plenty of length. Now if that's not enough length, it's just a simple matter of loosening up the knot, you know, jacking the knot back a little bit, and then I'll get the length I need to reach over here. I have to be careful with the wire. I can't have it interfere anywhere with the screw that's going to be coming up from the underside of the cabinet someday. Anyway, what we're going to do, I've stripped off, you know, that much. Yeah, you just kind of cut it around with a pair of dikes or a pair of scissors. And now I have to give it a little haircut. I've got to trim all of the excess off all the way around with a pair of scissors and with my dikes, stuff like that. Just kind of trim it up real good. And then I'm going to go ahead, after I get that done, I'm going to give it a good coating of nail polish all the way around. Now last time I did this, I used liquid tape, which also works, you know, and I had a lot of people tell me, oh, you know, you should have used, you know, nail polish. I've used nail polish in the past, okay? Not a problem. I knew that I could use nail polish, but you know, these videos are not designed to continually stay in the same rut all the time. You know, we can try different things once in a while. Got to be flexible, guys. You got to be flexible. Also, once I get this all done, get the hair trim back, and then put the nail polish on, and it hardens and everything, then I'm going to go ahead and take a piece of white heat shrink here. I don't have any black left that'll fit. But I'm going to slide the heat shrink all the way down. I'm going to heat shrink it down to cover up the area that, you know, is covered with the nail polish. Then we'll go ahead, split the wire all the way down, and after we split the wire, then we'll solder it up, and we'll be done. And we will be done with that power cord. One other thing. One of my subscribers said, you know, John, you might have forgot something. You maybe should have put some heatsink compound between the chassis and this resistor. Yeah, you know, look, this is a very big chassis. It can absorb a lot of heat. And relatively speaking, that's not a very large resistor. It may be 25 watts, but it's not going to require that much heat to be dissipated. However, you know, I'm going to go ahead and take this screw out, and I'm going to go ahead and lift that resistor up just a little bit. I'll probably have to desolder this top wire here to give me the flexibility I need. And I will go ahead and put a little heat shrink, I mean not heat shrink, but heat sink, heat sink compound under there. And then I'll put the resistor back down and put the screw and nut back in. You see, I'm being flexible. Well, there's the hair all fastened down with the clear nail polish. No more stringy crap everywhere. You've got to do that. You've got to keep that thing, that stringy mess, from fraying even further. It's only drawback to this kind of cord. Now we'll go ahead and slide our heat shrink up over the top. I'll probably stick it down in there a little deeper into the knot. And then I'll hit it with the heat gun. And there she is, all shrunk down. Looks nice and neat, doesn't it? That's what it should look like. You don't need any fraying, you know, cloth everywhere. It gets all up inside your radio, and it just doesn't look good, you know. Alright, now what we're going to do is split the cord. If I can get it to cooperate with me, I'm just going to take the old dikes here and put it right in the center where they're together, just like that. I'm just going to cut it, and that splits it like so, and then I'll split it all the way back to here. And as you can see, we have all the length we need to reach this end of the fuse holder, and over here to reach over there where we need to solder it. Now I'm going to run this stuff, you know, behind and underneath the other wires and bring it out. I'm not just going to lay it there and solder it. When I get done, it'll be all up through the bottom near the chassis and come around and be soldered in on both sides. You won't even hardly see where it's at. Now, in order to satisfy my subscriber Richard UK, we're going to go ahead and take some of this compound. I have already loosened up the resistor from the chassis. You can see it's flexible there. And I'm going to take some of this heatsink compound. I'm going to stick it down in there. And we're going to smear it on both sides. I'm going to put some on the chassis. I'll wipe up any excess later. And I'll put some on the bottom of the resistor. It'll take a few tries here to get it the way we want. Get it nice and smeary up in there. We want to be able to have good heat transfer. It's not a bad idea to do this, I guess, but I don't think it was actually essential. But what the heck, just give it the old college try. I'm about to put the first grid cap connector on the coax cable. And what I've done here is I have a smaller piece of heat shrink all the way up to the end where the wire, the shielding is sticking out. And I'm going to shrink that down. Then I'm going to take this shorter piece of larger heat shrink. You can see it right there. I'm going to bring that all the way up and put it across the tail, the little tail right here of the grid cap connector, and shrink that down on top of the smaller. And that'll give me a nice strong connection. Normally these grid caps, the soldering is done by putting the wire, parallel with the edge of the grid cap connector. I didn't do that. I soldered it straight in this time, and then made a little bend right there. Made a little bend, so where the center conductor kind of bent in and then up, and then I soldered it in place. Thankfully, Brendan had all that solder in there, which really helped a lot. So let's go ahead and shrink it down and see if my idea is going to work. If not, plan B. Well, I'd say that turned out pretty darn good. One on top of another. Now this is industrial strength heat shrink, really good thick stuff. And I get it from a friend of mine. She's all shrunk down. She seems to be really solid. Now the question is, I always worry about these wires breaking off on these things. That's why I'm paying like extra double attention to the strength of it. And let's see if it's going to sit on top of the cap up here. We have plenty of flexibility left, to get the grid. Look at there, boy. She fit right on up there. Just perfect. All right. Now all I have to do is the same thing to the other two. This one and this one. I am happy to report that when I pulled the 58 tube out of the box, look at here. Ooh, look how loose that one is. Ooh, that's great. I like that. Yeah. And I am happy because now it gives me a chance to fix another grid cap. And the more you do, the better you get. I mean, what kind of hobby would this be if everything we touched was already repaired or never got broken? Wouldn't be much fun, really. But at least now you know what I have to do to get it fixed. Well, we're having a little problem with this 58 grid cap. I'm glad it came about. So now we can show you another little difficulty you may run into. I've got all the solder removed from the top, and the grid cap will not come off. I've straightened up the wire and everything. It just won't come off. The glass is being held on, or I should say the cap is being held on by the glue around the glass. What do we do about that? Well, I don't know. By the way, this is going to be a longer video than I ever anticipated, but I think it's going to be worthwhile before it's done. I'm going to try heating it really good. I'm going to try heating it up real good and see if I can't lift that off there. But the glue on the inside of the cap is there must be like a bump or a blob or something on the glass, and the glue is around it to where it can't release. Let's see what I can do with a little extra heat. Well, as I expected, look at there. Look at that blob. It's small at the bottom, and it's got a big old blob around the top. That's what was holding it in. The glue was around the bottom, and it couldn't make it past that Couldn't make it past that bubble. Come on, camera. Let's focus here now. I guess it just doesn't want to do that. There we go. Get my fingers up here. That'll help. All right. So now what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to remount that cap a little bit. We're going to have to get rid of some of that glue there. I'll never get it back on. This old brown stuff's going to have to be reamed out a little bit where it goes on nice and easy. Then I can put my epoxy gel on. All right, the old cap fits right down on there. Nice and snug now, no problem at all. I can slip it right over there. What I did was I just reamed out a little bit with my pocket knife, that's all. And it now clears that bump, okay? Let me see if I can get her down there again. Yep, there it is. Time for some glue. Well, that's it, folks. Everything is done. I've got all the wires connected to the grid cap connectors on the tubes. The power cord has a plug on it now, and that's it. I mean, all the tubes are in the sockets. I think it didn't turn out too bad. You know, I'm pretty happy with it. Now, look, next time. I'm sorry for this being a long video, like I said earlier, but you know, I couldn't be helped. You know, I wanted everybody to see everything that was happening right up to the end, to the completion of this chassis, with the exception of the permanent magnet speaker conversion, which we will do next time, which means we got to go back under the chassis once again. But you know, we've been under there before, right? You better believe it. Thanks again for hanging with me, and until next time, this is John.